back in the fold, joining Bo and I throughout the season. ESPN NFL analyst, friend of the program, Mina Kimes is here on PHNX Cardinals. Welcome, Mina.
Hi, thanks for having me. I enjoy watching the Cardinals, so I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, I was curious. We saw them as one of your top 5 NFL League Pass teams, and after 1 week, are they staying within the top 5?
You know, after one half, I felt pretty good about that.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's early goings. Obviously, you got a rookie wide receiver, you're still trying to find the footing of, not just how to incorporate him into the offense, but also developing chemistry between him and the quarterback. That was obviously an issue. But, as far as the first performance goes, I thought it was intriguing. I thought Kyler Murray in particular played well. And that's something I'm excited to monitor throughout the season because, finally coming off of a healthy offseason, comfort in the offense, I thought all that showed up.
Do you feel like, Mina, though, at this point in Kyler Murray's career, given the state of, where the Cardinals are at, can they be taking moral victories after being up, 14 points, in their first game of the year? Because I think a lot of Cardinal fans expected them to close that game out against Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't because especially when the goal of this season, in my opinion, is for the offense to affirm what we saw in the second half of the last year and grow on it. I don't candidly have high expectations for this defense. I just think from a talent standpoint, they're just too up against it. That has not been the focus of the rebuild in the same way, although obviously you draft some players this year who you want to see turn into your defensive core, but you don't have highly paid free agents on that side of the ball. That's going to have to wait. This year for me is about that offense, affirming your decision to stick with Kyler Murray as your quarterback. Again, going off of week 1, no, it's not a win because you got to play a complete football game and you want to see a more refined passing attack. And you certainly want to see more Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think just isolating it to the quarterback, watching the way he looked, throwing the football, particularly on the move in the first half, some of the extensions that we saw, I thought his process was good. I do think there's something to be encouraged by.
Yeah, let's dive deeper into this offense because it sounds like you're with us. You're a bit shocked that the Cardinals didn't even tweak their offensive game plan really with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it was a heavy dose of James Conner and looking, over the middle of the field, Trey McBride, Greg Dortch. But as far as, the downfield passing attack and the incorporation of Marv, we just didn't see it. How do you kind of view the Cardinals remedying this?
Yeah, a lot of that is I have to think matchup specific, looking at this Buffalo defense that has some deficiencies up the spine and kind of thinking, okay, we're going to run the ball on them. We're going to pass it over the middle of the field, as you said. We're going to take advantage of our matchup advantages in that way. And the way the Bills played them in the game, too, just trying to put an umbrella on everything and force Kyler to check it down at times. I thought maybe the Cardinals almost let the defense dictate to them a little bit too much as this game went on with Drew Petzing. You never want to force your number one wide receiver just to do it, but I do think they probably should have made a better effort to do so in the second half. And I suspect next week you're going to see that a lot because you're going up against a team that doesn't really have very strong cornerbacks. The perimeter is where I would tack, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will be more involved as a result.
I want to stay on that subject if we could, Mina, just real quick, because, Cliff Kingsbury is kind of like a 4-letter word around here. But one thing he did excel at with Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins, they would stretch the field vertically. And, I understand at the end of last year, Drew Petzing, they kept it kind of condensed in the sense of keeping it underneath with K1. But now, as you mentioned, with the investment in these weapons, not just Marvin, but Trey McBride and Michael Wilson, there should be an obligation to reemerge Kyler's deep ball.
Yeah, you got to kind of take the governor off this offense. But you also have to see him throw a pretty deep ball. And I want to say, as much as I did see some encouraging stuff in Kyler's performance, we really haven't seen that since he's returned from the injury. You saw in the second half of last season, there was a lot to like, I thought. But again, you didn't really see that. You haven't seen it in a really long time. He used to throw a gorgeous, accurate deep ball with so much touch. You want to see that. And I think it makes me wonder, does Drew Petzing skeptical of the offense being efficient that way? Is skeptical to connect on those explosives? But you have to work past that because not only do you want to see it from the quarterback, and not only will defenses play them a little bit tighter and heavier if they don't have to fear that, but in Marvin Harrison Jr., think about it this way, you drafted him so high. When you drafted a player that high, when he comes in with expectations that high, and when his tape looks like it did in college, you're not just saying, hey, like, let's only throw the deep ball if we feel perfect comfort in a quarterback and we love the matchup and we, can scheme him wide open. You're doing it because it's Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Like a 50-50 ball to him should be a 70-30 ball. That's what we saw out of him. So I do think you have to test that a bit more. And it's not just about leaning on the quarterback. It's saying, hey, we really trust this guy to go up and make a play.
We all long for deep ball Kyler to return home. We're all impatiently waiting for him to walk through that door. Isn't this a league-wide thing, though? I mean, we're seeing across the league numbers is even further down this season. But I mean, what can the Cardinals do to maybe be one of the few teams that can do it? Maybe like the Chiefs or the Dolphins.
It's such a great point because the numbers, not just this for week one, but really going back to last season, average depth of target is way down, and it primarily has to do with the way defenses are playing, similarly to what you saw from Buffalo in this game, right? Just trying to put a roof on offenses. And as far as how to get past that, or I guess I think sometimes it's funny because sometimes, it's like, okay, but you want to be content. If defenses play that way and you're a dominant running team, and I think the Cardinals view themselves as such, you don't want to force the ball downfield. You want to say, oh, you're going to sit back and too high. Okay, we're going to just grind you away underneath. And that's great. But the problem is if you don't connect on anything downfield, start cheating up a little bit, and there's less fear of not having, extra cornerbacks in coverage. And that's where you start to increase the level of difficulty in the passing game because the margins become so tight underneath. You have to stress defenses vertically. So I do think that with Arizona, if you don't really see that from this offense in the next few weeks, defenses will start playing them differently as a result, and it'll make it harder to be efficient and have the high success rate.
I didn't know what to truly make of those numbers. I thought it potentially could have just been based on Bo Nix's debut on Sunday for those numbers.
Caleb too, man. Caleb and Jaden, dude. Those guys were, I feel like between the three of them, they averaged 3 air yards per target. It was wild.
Let's stay on the subject of Kyler Murray, because I think he's graded on a curve a little bit and not the fairest of ways. So Bo and I argue, about this seemingly every day, that the Cardinals did not invest in their defense this offseason, certainly in free agency. And you look around the landscape of the NFL, and Baker Mayfield's winning games in the NFC South, and he's got a defensive head coach, but they have talent there. I think the Cardinals, at the end of the day, are doing a disservice to Kyler Murray because, they put up 28 points this week. They lost. Yeah. Dating back to last year, they've given up the second most points in the NFL. ESPN picked them to be the worst defense in the NFL this year. Do you feel like, yes, they can rebuild, but at the same time, you got to allow, when you're paying a quarterback $50 million, an opportunity to compete, especially in this division?
Yeah, it puts a lot of stress on the young players that I alluded to, the ones you want to see become the defensive core. I will say I thought Zaven Collins was outstanding in this one, and also unfairly called at the end of the first half. If I remember correctly, that was completely BS. But it does stress them. And you see that a team like Carolina, where they were we don't care about the defense anymore. We're going to invest entirely in the offense. Well, setting aside how that offense looks, that's great. But all of a sudden, your offense is constantly in passing situations. I will say this, and I said at the top, I'm not a believer in the Cardinals defense this year. I don't think they're going to be one of the better defenses in the NFL. However, you can look at the Bucs and say, wow, they were awesome. You have to account for competition week one. I know it sucks to give up a lead to Buffalo, but Buffalo is one of the best teams in the NFL. Josh Allen, my view is QB2 in this league. A lot of teams are going to give up 28 points to Buffalo. It sucks the way it played out, no doubt, especially when he goes Superman like that. And I think some of the better quarterbacking performances around the NFL this week came against defenses where we're going to look back and say, oh, a lot of that actually had to do with who was on the other side of the football, the Commanders, the Panthers, what have you. So, I'm not saying to not be skeptical about the defense for sure. But I also think you have to put this week one loss in context, which is you played a really damn good football team and lost.
A little bit of a two-parter here, actually just straight up a two-parter. As far as things that this Cardinals team can build off of from week one, and then one that you're waving your red flag on.
I think, like I said, I thought there was actually a lot encouraging from Kyler Murray, honestly, week one. I thought showed good accuracy, obviously, especially in the first half. You saw the same sort of ability to extend and throw on the move that you saw in the second half of last season. I think there's definitely something to build on there. Even when the run game isn't dominant, it wasn't dominant. It was fine, but it wasn't dominant. The quarterback being able to work, particularly the short intermediate part of the field, is huge. So now you want to build on that. You want to, throw the ball deep, as we've discussed. But I do think it was actually a good game from Kyler. So there's that. Defensively, like I said, I thought Zaven Collins looked outstanding, certainly validating that contract decision. Just really like watching him play football. He was a prospect I was always really intrigued by because of his length and get off and, coming from the small school. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I would take him. What was he, 17th or something? I remember being shocked when he was drafted. And, you can argue that he hasn't lived up to that status, but I think maybe that put an unfair expectation on what he is actually capable of. And he is naturally the kind of player you see get better as they figure out how to deploy him. Once they realized he was good rushing the passer, he seems like he's kind of putting it together. So that's really exciting there. As far as the red flag goes, my expectations for the defense are not great. I've talked about that. I think, just the Harrison Jr. thing is something you really, really want to keep an eye on because you don't, like I said, not to be a broken record on this, you don't want to let matchups necessarily dictate your game plan to the extent that we saw in week 1.
Mina, we'll get you out of here on this. Looking ahead to this weekend, the Arizona Cardinals host the LA Rams. They're favored for the first time against a divisional opponent in the history of the JG era. Gannon, unfortunately, 0-for-6 last year in the division, playing without a full deck. We admit that. But now you go into this game, the Rams are beat up. They have no offensive lineman to speak of. Puka Nacua is out. They just played 5 quarters on Sunday Night Football. I don't want to talk about must wins here in week 2, but if we're sitting here at the end of the year and it's like, oh man, they missed out on the postseason by 1 or 2 games. Is this a game the Cardinals, in your opinion, to be viable at the end of the year have to have?
I will go back to kind of what I know this probably isn't what Cardinals fans want to hear, but I think success in this one isn't beating the Rams necessarily, but I think you want your offense to look better than they did week 1, or at least put together a more complete performance because this Rams defense, like I said, the perimeter is where I would attack. If you can't get Marvin Harrison Jr. going in this one, I actually think you officially are have a problem, right? So there's that aspect of it. However, yes, they're banged up, but you just saw sometimes, Matthew Stafford, the Stafford-McVay Cup combination, it often doesn't matter. They were down to their backup offensive tackles. It didn't matter if Stafford goes into God mode the way he does. And I don't think letting that offense score on you is some great failure because I think they're going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL, even with the injuries.
Did you see the Mesquite High School alum Roy Lopez with the strip sack?
He went to Mesquite?
Allen?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Is he our first NFL player?
I'd have to check the wiki page on that. I don't know. But
wow.
This show is, we're leading the charge as far as the Roy Lopez fan club. So
he is a good player.
You're a proud Mesquite alum.
He is super solid. Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know we had, because I know Fitzpatrick was Highland, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Or Gilbert yeah. And then Purdy went to some school I've never heard of, some new school, I feel like, right?
Yeah, Perry.
Perry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. We got a Mesquite guy. Okay. Oh, now I have no choice but to stand. Thank you for letting me know.
They're true only
proud McBride Jade. And then of course you got Rolo.
I love it. Go Wildcats.
Great stuff from Mina Kimes. Of course, check out the Mina Kimes show featuring the great Lenny and of course all her work on ESPN, NFL Live. And of course, saw you last night, Monday Night Football. It's fantastic work. Can't wait to catch up with you down the road here. Thanks, Mina.
Bye, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.